What happens when a nation finds itself standing in the middle of the world's two biggest powers, both demanding loyalty, both offering opportunities, and both warning of consequences? Australia, a land known for its open skies and easygoing lifestyle, now faces one of the toughest diplomatic challenges of its modern history. On one side stands the United States, its oldest and most powerful security ally. On the other stands China, its largest trading partner and a rapidly rising global force. This is not just a matter of choosing friends, it is a question of survival, prosperity, and identity. In this video, we will uncover why Australia is walking this dangerous tightrope, how it is balancing between Washington and Beijing, and what the stakes really are for the future of the country and the region. The weight of history and alliances. Australia's deep connection to the United States is not a recent development. Decades of military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and joint operations have built a bond that is hard to break. This alliance is deeply embedded in the Australian national security structure, with American forces regularly training on Australian soil and both nations relying on each other in times of crisis. Historically, the US has been seen as the ultimate guarantor of Australia's safety in a world where threats can emerge suddenly. But this history is also a chain that ties Australia to US strategic goals, and those goals are increasingly in direct opposition to China's rise. The AUKUS Treaty and shared participation in global security operations have created a sense of mutual obligation that goes beyond politics, turning the US into a cornerstone of Australian defense thinking. Yet, the same strong alliance that offers protection can also drag Australia into conflicts and tensions it might otherwise wish to avoid. The economic magnet of China. While the US dominates in defense and security, China dominates in trade and economic opportunities. Over the past few decades, Australia has become a key supplier of resources, energy, and agricultural goods to the Chinese market. This trade has fueled growth, created jobs, and expanded industries across the country. From iron ore to wine, Australia's exports have found a massive and eager consumer base in China. The Chinese economy's appetite for raw materials has, in many ways, become the engine of Australia's prosperity. However, this deep economic reliance comes at a cost. When political disagreements flare, whether over security, human rights, or strategic issues, Beijing has shown its willingness to restrict imports, apply tariffs, or slow down trade in ways that send shockwaves through Australian businesses. The wealth that comes from this relationship is undeniable, but it leaves Australia vulnerable to economic pressure from a partner whose political agenda it cannot control. Strategic geography. Australia's position on the map places it in a unique and precarious location. Situated between the Pacific and Indian Oceans, it sits on vital sea lanes that are crucial for global trade. It is also part of a region where China is expanding its influence, building ports, securing maritime routes, and investing in infrastructure projects under its Belt and Road Initiative. At the same time, the US maintains a strong military presence in the Indo-Pacific, viewing Australia as a key outpost for monitoring and countering China's ambitions. This means that in any potential conflict or standoff, Australia's location transforms it into both a strategic asset and a strategic target. Geography has always shaped the fate of nations, and for Australia, it means living in a neighborhood where competition between the US and China is heating up, leaving little room for neutrality. Security and military commitments. Australia's military strategy has long been intertwined with the US. The two countries share intelligence under the Five Eyes network, conduct joint training, and integrate their forces in ways that make separation almost impossible. The recent agreements for the acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines under AUKUS have further solidified this bond, signaling to China that Australia is firmly aligned with US-led defense structures. This military closeness strengthens deterrence, but it also makes Australia appear less independent in its regional policy. China sees these moves as hostile, framing Australia as a US proxy in the Pacific. This perception increases the risk that in any US-China confrontation, Australia would be considered a frontline participant, whether it wants to be or not. Political pressure and diplomacy. Balancing relations with both Washington and Beijing requires a constant diplomatic juggling act. US leaders expect Australia to support Western-led initiatives, vote with them in international bodies, and align on security matters. Meanwhile, China seeks to pull Australia closer into its orbit, offering trade incentives, investment opportunities, and diplomatic goodwill when relations are warm. This dual pressure leaves Canberra in a position where every foreign policy statement, every defense procurement, and every trade deal is scrutinized for signs of favoritism. Even minor decisions can trigger major responses, forcing Australian leaders to walk a fine line between appearing loyal to their allies and open to cooperation with their biggest customer. Public opinion and identity. Within Australia, the question of whether to lean toward the US or China is not just a matter for politicians, it's a subject of national debate. Some Australians see the US as a natural partner, sharing democratic values, cultural ties, and a history of mutual defense. Others argue that the future lies with Asia, that geography and economic opportunity make closer ties with China inevitable. The media, academia, and business sectors often reflect this divide, with strong opinions on both sides. Public opinion can shape policy, especially in democratic systems, and leaders must navigate domestic politics while crafting foreign policy. This internal debate adds another layer of complexity to Australia's balancing act, as any move in one direction risks alienating a significant portion of the population. Economic diversification challenges. One way to reduce vulnerability is to diversify trade away from China, but this is easier said than done. Building new markets takes time, and few countries can match China's scale and demand. Efforts to strengthen economic ties with India, Japan, Southeast Asia, and Europe are ongoing, but replacing the depth of the Chinese market is a monumental task. Similarly, deepening economic ties with the US presents its own hurdles, as America's demand for Australian exports is more limited in certain sectors. This means that even when tensions with China are high, Australia often finds itself unable to make a clean break without significant economic pain. The quest for diversification is essential for long-term security, yet remains one of Australia's greatest challenges in managing its geopolitical position. Regional leadership and influence. Australia is not just reacting to US and Chinese moves, it is also trying to shape its own role in the Indo-Pacific. Canberra invests heavily in relationships with Pacific Island nations, Southeast Asia, and regional forums such as ASEAN. These efforts aim to strengthen regional stability, offer alternatives to Chinese influence, and show that Australia is more than just a junior partner to the US. However, such leadership efforts are often interpreted by Beijing as competition, while Washington sometimes views them as insufficient in countering Chinese advances. Australia's attempt to be an independent regional leader is admirable, but it is constantly overshadowed by the gravitational pull of the two superpowers. The technology and intelligence battlefield. Beyond trade and defense, the US-China rivalry is increasingly about technology and data. Australia has been caught in this battle, especially over issues like 5G infrastructure, cybersecurity, and critical minerals needed for high-tech industries. Canberra's decision to ban certain Chinese technology companies from its networks angered Beijing, while aligning it more closely with US security policy. At the same time, Australia's rich deposits of rare earth minerals have made it a key player in the global supply chain, attracting both American and Chinese interest. Technology competition is not just an economic issue, it is a matter of national security, making it yet another arena where Australia must choose sides carefully. The uncertain future. The most challenging aspect of Australia's position is that the future is unpredictable. Global power dynamics are shifting, and the rivalry between the US and China shows no sign of cooling. Any sudden event, a trade war, a military clash, or a diplomatic breakdown, could force Australia to make a choice it has long tried to avoid. The hope is that it can continue balancing, taking advantage of opportunities from both sides while avoiding the fallout of their disputes. But history shows that when great powers clash, those in the middle often face the hardest consequences. Australia's future will depend on its ability to remain adaptable, strengthen its independence, and maintain open channels with both Washington and Beijing in a world where trust is increasingly fragile. Australia's story is a reminder that in geopolitics, there are no easy choices. The nation's deep security alliance with the United States offers protection but comes with strategic strings attached. Its economic partnership with China brings wealth but also vulnerability. Geography, history, and national identity all combine to place Australia in a position where every decision matters, not just for itself, but for the stability of the region. This balancing act is a high-stakes game, where the wrong step could lead to economic pain, diplomatic isolation, or even conflict. As the US-China rivalry intensifies, Australia will continue to walk the tightrope, trying to remain friends with both without becoming the enemy of either. Whether it succeeds will shape not only its own destiny but also the future of the Indo-Pacific.